partner on a deal. We just closed one today, so super excited about that.
Yes.
But back, this is a great background. But Krista went to NYU, graduated in 1990, then went to Brooklyn Law School. Spent several years practicing law. It looks like 2009, she started to get into single family space like so many people do. And then realized that she wanted to find a bigger, better way. So moved into multifamily in 2012. Fast forward a little bit, started building a relationship with Chris Jackson, who a lot of you guys know, and they formed Sharpline Equity in 2016. And Krista, you might have to correct me on some of this if I'm missing some things. But they have done deals in Ohio, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, New York, Pennsylvania, and now Missouri.
That's right.
And yeah, so Krista, I'll let you take it from there. But everybody, welcome Krista Testani.
Hey, thank you guys.
Hey, and before you start, Krista, I want everybody to know today Krista just closed a 64 unit today, right? Literally like an hour ago. Was
like an hour ago.
All right, and as Joe said, Joe's part of it too. So, round of applause, please. Great job, great job.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, Krista, that. It's all yours now.
All right. So I'm gonna share the screen. Share. Do you guys see the screen? Thumbs up. You see it? Okay, cool. All right, excellent. All right, guys, thank you so much. I am so excited to be doing this. I'm so excited that Joseph asked me to do this presentation because everyone is correctly focused. There's just a lot of stuff out there on all the Facebook groups and the Meetup groups about getting deals, right? Networking with the lenders and the brokers, and how do you talk to brokers, and how do you talk to sellers, and how do you talk to lenders, and how do you feed your pipeline, and how do you underwrite your deal, and how do you negotiate, how do you get an LOI out, negotiate a contract? Well, and all of this stuff, obviously, we all need to focus on and learn about to get into a deal. But I'm really excited to talk about this because I feel like there's not enough discussion out there about operating these deals, whether it be self-management or third-party management. Specifically, we utilize third-party management, but a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is, either self-management. It doesn't matter. These principles apply. Let me just make sure this is moving. Why isn't it moving? Hold on one second. Okay, next. All right, so we basically went over all of this. So I'm going to actually just blow past this because Joe already went through the fact of who Chris is and who I am. So I'm just gonna, all right. So the experience quickly, just to talk about this, we have 397 units under management. 64 of those units we just landed an hour ago. So that's really exciting. And we have 108 units that are currently under contract, which should close June and July. So we're working towards that. We have 7 full cycle multifamily projects. So that means we have purchased, operated, and sold 7 apartment buildings to date. And we right now, Chris and I have 2 properties under contract for sale. So we have a 174 unit and a 96 unit that we're currently selling. So if that goes through, hopefully in June, we will have 9 full cycle multifamily projects. So we're really excited about that. All of our deals have been syndicated from day one, even our single family portfolio that we have in Syracuse. We started out, we did a big push and we bought 50. We're now selling off and we're down under 20. Even those single families we syndicated. We had investors in every single house. And we've always third-party managed. We never bought in our own backyard, tri-state area, not interested at all. In case you haven't figured it out, I'm a Long Islander in New York. Not interested in doing that. So it's always been geographically pretty far, never felt confident enough to self-manage from a distance. That may be changing shortly. Our business is growing and we're transitioning, but really to date, still, we are third-party managing all of our properties. Now, our past and current portfolio altogether, the value of the assets is up to 35 million, and we've raised approximately 20 million in private capital to acquire that stuff. So really excited to talk about this. I'm sure the experience levels are all different. I know some of the stuff I'm going to go over may be pretty like very rudimentary, but because I don't know the experience levels, and I know there are some beginners here, I'm going to be going over some basic stuff. I'm going to be talking high level, and I'm going to get into the weeds as well. Okay, I'm going to do both tonight. So what I want to talk about is if any of you ever felt like this, or you're afraid you might feel like this the first day after close, right? We're all working so hard to get the deal and close the deal, and now you got the deal. So now what, right? And, this is, pretty basic stuff. A way to avoid feeling like this, obviously, is what are you doing in preparation before you actually close, right? So that's the most important thing, is what are you doing to lead up to close? So the day after close, after you've celebrated and you've polished off those bottles of wine, you don't feel like this, right? So high level, I want to dispel some myths right now, especially for the beginners who are hearing about what it's like to operate these properties. Okay. In my experience, everything I'm going to say, I'm going to qualify with, in my opinion, in my experience, because people do have different levels of experience, and you may not agree with some of the things I'm going to say, but it's really based on how I feel, based on what I've gone through since, I bought my first property at the end of 2012. So I've been doing this for, a number of years. My personal opinion, managing properties, operating properties, it is not this supervisory sit back and kind of oversee your property manager. It is not that, in my opinion. It is not a situation, and I say this, guys, because I actually did it. I would not recommend that you approach your management style with the monthly check-in, because what happens is you will get a monthly statement from your management company, right? So I have this as a bullet for those of you that are like, no kidding. I don't consider myself to be, I'm not the smartest tool in the shed, but I'm not an idiot. I did approach asset management like this, though, with my first two properties. I got situated and acclimated with my management company. And then it was like, okay, send me the first month's report and then we'll go over it in detail. And I kind of set up a system where that's what I was doing. It was like a monthly check-in, going over financials and going over things. And all I can say is big mistake, huge mistake, learned my lesson. Not surprisingly, those were not my highest performing assets, the ones that I did that with, okay? This is something where you have to be much more hands-on, in my opinion, if you're going to be a good operator. It is not a part-time job. Not to say people with W-2s can't do this, but I realized to be really good and really to tune your skill set and oversee these properties and manage these properties, this is not a part-time job. And, what I'm going to venture to say is, and you can do this well without completely pissing off your management company, but I'm going to tell you right now, the way that we've become very successful at operating properties is being extremely intense and heavy-handed with our management companies, almost to the extent that I'm going to say that we micromanage. But there's a way to do it. There's a way to micromanage and not really piss people off. Because you can piss people off by micromanaging, but I'm going to tell you how to do it and how to do it well. Now I want to go in, I'm just going to step back a little bit and give some high perspective about how we approach our operations, and then I'm going to get into the weeds. So we call it the 6 pillars of asset management, because we really believe at this point, having looked back at 8 years of doing this, these are the areas that you need to concentrate on consistently all the time. You have to be looking at these areas all the time. The first one, on-site management relationship, that's like the big umbrella one. So I'm going to go into, some details about that. That's the big one. But these other areas that you have to focus on from day one, and I'm telling you right now, the reason I'm like hammering these points is I didn't do this in the beginning. I didn't like suddenly like wake up and own my first building and know enough to say, I have to be going through delinquency and renewals and how they're prospecting new tenants and community development and reputation management. I didn't even know what these things were. And I didn't know what these things were for years. It's over 8 years now that I figured out and looked back, and we've realized like these are the high concentration areas that you and your team have to focus on all the time. Now, the first one is on-site management and the relationship between you and your on-site manager. Okay. To avoid feeling like this really scared baby, it's about what you're doing before close. Now, the interview process with a management company, the questions you should be asking, and how you vet your management company can be an entire presentation separate from this. So I can't go into that right now, just so because I want to get through the other pillars. Let's just assume for the moment that we all know how to vet out our companies, okay, and that we've picked one. The first thing that I'm going to tell you, obviously, you have chosen your management company prior to close so that they're on board, they're part of your team. The one thing I'm going to suggest to you guys from the get-go is when you are vetting out your companies in the various markets, and I know the smaller markets, this is going to be more difficult than the larger markets, but if at all possible, line up your second choice. Know who your second choice would be if the first company was to disappear. Because I'm telling you right now, and this is painful to go through, but I could promise you in your careers moving forward, you will be replacing a third-party manager at some point. It is a painful thing to do. We have done it 3 times already. We have done it twice in Syracuse and once in Atlanta. It is not a great experience. You lose time, you lose money, and you may lose some confidence with your investor base when it's happening. It's very important how you deliver the message to your investors, because side note, digression, you should always be reporting to your investors the bad and the good. Got to do that all the time. I lost my train of thought. You have to deliver that message carefully. But my point is, it's going to happen. So if in fact, when you're in your new markets and you're interviewing the companies, if you have that company lined up, it's nice to have it in your back pocket to know who to call right away when you have to make that difficult decision. So I'm going to recommend that you do that whenever you can. Okay. When you're vetting out your companies. Now, setting up expectations is one of the most important things that you do with your management companies from the beginning. I have this conversation when I vet my management companies, and I have this conversation again, as we get closer to the close. You are doing a couple of things. Number one, you should have been providing them your budget and your assumptions, your pro forma before you close, and let them review that, get feedback on it. You really should be doing that before close, but if it's at close or right after, whatever, that's fine too. But I would, encourage people to get feedback from the people who are in the field, right? So they're supposed to be looking at it. Now, I used to be very hardcore, like, this is the pro forma, these are the budget assumptions we've discussed, and they're set in stone. Over the years, I've realized that that's not realistic, and it's okay to be a little flexy, 30, 60 days, 90 days in, because once everyone gets acclimated and your management team is in place, maybe there's things that, they couldn't realize or they couldn't possibly know until they actually were physically on site and start operating the property. And so maybe some expense lines may be tweaked because of that. And that is okay. I'm going to say, though, at a certain point, you kind of want to cut it off and say, okay, we've tweaked the budget based on, your feedback over the past 30 days, tweak your budget, finalize your numbers, and then you say, okay, this is now our budget assumption moving forward, and you hold them accountable to those numbers. I just want to share that in the beginning. If you tweak it a little bit, those first couple of months, it's fine. The next thing, this seems obvious. This seems so obvious, but again, maybe for some it's not. I talked to my management company immediately and set up the expectation about weekly phone calls. And the reason that I'm telling you, have the conversation first, because of an experience I had when I was vetting at one of my companies I was interviewing. And I said to them, I'm going to want to have weekly phone calls in the beginning. And this is, I can kind of repeat this. It's almost at like ad nauseum when I say, I'm going to want to have phone calls weekly in the beginning. And we're going to continue to do that until everyone on the team feels comfortable. And then eventually we'd like to move to bi-weekly calls. But that's as infrequent as it gets, or as frequent as it gets. It's bi-weekly. We never move to monthly. We go from weekly and we transition over to bi-weekly when the property is stabilized and we all feel comfortable. And I had a management company, older gentleman who had been, asset managing, he was a third-party manager for 40 years. And he was like, oh no, Mrs. Testani, you don't need to do that. We pride ourselves on running properties so well that you won't even have to check in with us except for, a monthly basis. You don't need weekly calls. And that conversation was really quick, right? So I ended that like, thank you very much. I always say, like, guys, are you on the same page? Are you okay with this? Because this is what I expect. I want to block a time on a Thursday afternoon. Usually in the beginning, the calls go longer as you own the property longer and longer, the calls get more streamlined, but solicit consent and cooperation immediately that there's going to be weekly check-ins until further notice. Okay. But for that one company, I've never had a management company say no to that. A little tidbit. And again, I've been doing this 8 years. I've only kind of really fine-tuned the weekly call experience over the last couple of years. I started out like, all right, let's just go through the reports. And if I had questions, I'd ask questions. And then I'd be like, all right, guys, what's going on? Tell me what's happening, trying to get feedback from everyone on the team. Like it was like it was just unorganized and it was a waste of time. If you're going to check in weekly and you're going to demand weekly calls with your management company, be focused. And again, it took me a long time to get to the point where we are like a well-oiled machine. We send out an agenda every week. Okay. We send out the agenda, preferably the night before, the morning of. The agenda has bullets. Guess what a lot of those bullets are? If I go back a couple of slides, it's going to be a lot of those topics: income and expenses, delinquency, where are we at with renewals, what's happening with, again, I'll go through all the different bullets, but we go through that every single week. Same thing. And then obviously, if you have CapEx projects going on, you're going to explore that. And I always have the miscellaneous category, on the bottom. And that's when they tell me, oh, there was a fire last night, or, someone got shot, or, the miscellaneous category is what else is going on. But, be really focused and efficient with your time and their time. And the more prepared you are, it helps them to be prepared. Because guess what? What sucks is when you're asking a question and they're like, yeah, I don't know, I got to get back to you. If you send them agenda ahead of time, they understand what's already going to be points of discussion. They will have their answers ready for you. Guys, when you're doing one property, you think this is not a big deal. When you're asset managing 5, 6, 7, 8 properties, like, you need to get systemized with this stuff, because I have my Thursdays, I'm on asset management calls from like 11 o'clock in the morning till 5:30 at night. I go from one property to the next. I need to move through quickly. I need to get my information. We need to, plan our next steps. And then I'm off that call and I'm on to the next one. Thursdays is a very tough day for me. Everyone in my house, hates Thursdays because I come home like exhausted. But so you really need to get systemized with that. Now, when it comes to system, if anyone knows Chris Jackson, he's a super tech guy, right? He owns a tech company. So he constantly wants, we tried Teams and we did Asana and we did all these, we've tried out a lot of different online systems when it comes to tracking of tasks and notes and, you know, whatever works for you guys, whatever works for you. If you're a techie too and you want to do something like that, like go for it. Do whatever helps you organize. I'm a little bit more old school when it comes to this. Since I'm, you know, I got to call the shots when it comes to this. Chris has tried to, you know, ask me to utilize certain things, and I tried it and I hated it. And I went back to what I like best. This is what I do. You don't have to do it, but it has become so efficient for us. This is what we do. Okay. I send out my agenda in an email. Boom. Everyone gets the bullets in an email. Okay. We get on the call. I pull up the email. I hit forward. Now I can type on that email. We go through all our points. I type all the feedback that's going on in red, so it's nice and visible. Meeting's over. I put the addresses. I send the email to everyone. Now they see in red everything that was discussed, all the tasks that need to be taken care of. They have it in front of them, and they know I'm going to be checking on them next week. Now I have my assistant. We created a Google Doc, right? I like Google because it's a live doc that could be seen and shared by everyone, right? So we set up a Google Doc, an Excel spreadsheet Google Doc, and every tab is a date. So if I have a asset management call on 4/26, I take my email notes, I hit copy, and I paste it on the 4/26 tab. Now I have memorialized everything that went on in that phone call. Now, when I got to do an agenda for next week, which I'm not going to get till the day before next week, I go to my Google Doc. I see what was going on. I see where they have to follow up. I remind myself what we talked about last week. Now, from that Google Doc, I make my new agenda. Boom, send out my agenda and repeat. Okay, so you just keep repeating that. The Google Doc becomes a master spreadsheet for you to refer to. I cannot tell you how many times when somebody was disputing something, or no, you never said that, I don't recall that, I can look through my Google tabs, I can see what we discussed about. Okay, you're holding your property company accountable, right? So make sure you are really systematic in everything that you do, because you don't want to be like a he said, she said situation, right? I'm a lawyer by trade. Document things. Yosef, you know what I'm talking about. Please document everything, and then you never get into the he said, she said bullshit conversation. Okay, so you're going to do all of that, and then again, to avoid the feeling of, oh my God, we just closed, what's next? You have your launch call. You're scheduling the launch call 2 to 3 days before your close with your management company, and going over all the little details they may need to go over regarding transition. Okay, so get that call out of the way, discuss whatever it is you need to discuss. I can go into detail about what you discuss on a launch call, but for the purpose of tonight, have your launch call with your management company a couple of days before. Okay.
Hey, Krista, can I say
Sure.
a couple things real quick?
Sure.
So I know you said it was kind of common sense, some of these things, but I'll be the first to raise my hand and say that I screwed up on one of these. So we didn't set the tone for our PM on a 44 unit, and they now we're trying to get them to do weeklies, and it's like pulling teeth. So definitely set the tone on the 68 unit. We did we did it the right way, and it's been pretty smooth. So yeah, it's just a big lesson learned for me. I mean, you say it's common sense, but I think a lot of people also think that these properties are going to run themselves.
I agree. This
don't.
is all super helpful.
And they don't run themselves,
Yep.
which is why I look like this. Yeah, you know, lots of cover up over here, guys. Lots of cover up. Yeah, you know, it's just, and that's why my next slide is what I say it is: how to micromanage without your manager hating you. Because here's the deal, you do have to micromanage, and nobody likes to be micromanaged. Me in particular, I don't like to be micromanaged. And anytime I get a sense that Chris is micromanaging, I go after him like the claws come out. I don't like it. So you need to do it with some grace. And over the course of time, and this is, just about interpersonal relationships, like what do you do to soften the blow? Because the blow to your management company is that you're going to be this, if you're doing it right, you're going to be this in your face, heavy handed, white, like white on rice type of management, asset management company where you're, on them all the time, right? So how do you soften that blow? And it is a balancing act. And the reason that you have to walk this fine line is that just as easily as you can fire your management company, they can fire you. Okay. I mean, it is not unheard of that a management company is like, I'm out of here. It's too high maintenance for me. So keeping that in mind, it's like, so how do you set the tone and the atmosphere so that it's okay that you're micromanaging them? Like, I'm going to venture to say this, and I really feel confident saying that you can call up any previous manager, except the ones that we fired. You can call up any previous management company and or current one and speak to someone who knows us. And I really don't think that they would have a bad thing to say about us. They may talk about our intensity, but I really think that our companies enjoy working with us. And it's because of the little things that we do. For instance, okay, it seems obvious, Joe, to do this, but when I talk to my management company, I'm like a little bit of a cheerleader. I always talk about being a team, and I always emphasize how our management company is one of our most important team members. I try to emphasize that because that in fact is true, and the importance of their role and how, grateful that I am for them and everything that they do. I acknowledge and praise when they do something good. Inevitably, your companies will excel in certain areas and do things well. And there are other areas they're really going to fall down on the job, right? And you're going to have to hold them accountable. But when they're doing the good stuff, like what is it? Joe, have you been on my call? You haven't been on, you will be on my calls, right? You're not on my calls yet.
No, but I was on the pre-call, the launch call.
The launch call, right.
Yeah, and actually Colin, the owner of the property management company, called me, and he was kind of joking. He's just like, wow, you guys know what you want. And he's like, it was really refreshing because it was like, this is what these are the expectations, this is what we want, this is how things are going to be ran. And he was like, I don't get that very often. So he really appreciated the approach.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I think at the end of the day, just if you go in setting expectations, then nobody's taken by surprise as things move along, right? Because you already laid down the groundwork. So yeah, Joe, when you pop in and out of the asset management calls for Main Street, you'll hear like it's very much I'm a cheerleader when people do things really well. I'll be the cheerleader. And then when they're underperforming somewhere, they're going to be called out on it, and I have to explain it. And as a team, we work through it and try to resolve it. But nothing is really going to get by us, and it's not going to get by us because it's, you only are checking in on monthly calls. You don't start seeing trending till 3 months out. You're on weekly calls. You start seeing trending 1 month in, right? So you're going to catch everything because of those weekly calls. So really, really important. And, the one thing that's just so interesting, and when I say do the little things, I don't care what's going on with the company. There's certain things that we just do every year. And one of the things that we do every year is at holiday time, we send a basket to if we have an on-site leasing office, we'll send a basket. And then we usually do some Visa cards. We send the Visa cards in the mail to whomever, however you want to break it up, around the Christmas holidays. And every time I do this with a new company, I get such a surprise reaction. Like, I'm sure Colin, when we do this, is going to be, and I don't get it. I'm like, this is not a big deal. And I cannot be the only company out there that's doing this. Like, I can't even, I find it hard to believe I'm the only one that meaning we, our team at Sharpline, is thinking of throwing cards in and sending out a basket for the holiday season. Please do that. It goes a long way. It's not a lot of money out of pocket. It goes again, show your appreciation around the holiday times. I feel that's a no-brainer. I feel like that's common sense. It generates goodwill, between, again, you're constantly nurturing your relationship among your team members. Your management team is really important. You have to be willing. So because you're on top of them, because you're watching every move that they make, because you're having your weekly calls, when and if the time comes, sometimes it'll be small, sometimes there may be something major that goes wrong. You have to be willing to do whatever it takes, immediately jump in and do whatever it takes. And so I'm gonna go through an example. I'm going to start talking fast, Joseph. I'm going to go because I know I have 5 other pillars. But this is a really important example, and it's also a talking point for one of the other pillars. So we have this deal in Augusta, and it was a heavy lift, and we had a lot of units. We were doing interior, big rehab turns, and we were doing them in blocks of 10. So we'd get the company in. This building was brought down to like 30% occupancy, so we had a lot of room to work. So we would do a block of 10, lease up, block of 10, lease up. It went really well in the beginning, and we were leasing up in January and February, and suddenly we hit a wall. We hit a wall around March, and we're like, but this is like prime time leasing season. Why suddenly are we not leasing up? Like, what is going on? A couple of weeks in a row, we're like getting responses, but nothing to really explain what was going on. I get on a plane, I go down there, I live there for a week, okay? Watching everything that's going on, constant conference calls with everyone back in New York about what's happening. We come to realize, for whatever reason, the leasing agent checks out. She is not following up. So we have people calling up to get the apartments, and they were being put in the system, and there was no follow-up at all. So all of our leads were going stale. So I watched her and I observed what was going on and taking long lunches. She didn't even pretend to be a good employee while I was there. It was like the most bizarre thing. But we realized what the problem was. And it was like, all right, we now have to take over. We literally took over. From that, we built a proprietary system. This is one of the other pillars I'll talk about. But we ended up taking over, having all of the marketing phone number go to our phones. We set up a system where we logged in everybody that asked for an application. We set up a system for follow-up. We basically did the work of our management team at that very moment. And while we were doing it, I was on the phone with the regional manager, and I'm like, find a new person. So while we're doing this, and I'm living there for, a week and a half, she's out there starting to interview other people. So my point is, sometimes really bad things might happen. It doesn't necessarily warrant just a fire. Firing is the worst thing. That's your last resort, firing your management company. Sometimes you have to just be willing to jump in and do what it takes to be the solution, right? To figure out the solution. From that not so great experience, we have now developed a system that we are now very good at prospecting tenants and follow-up. And I'll get into that with the other pillar. And it wouldn't have happened if we were sitting back and waiting for management to resolve the problem. You don't wait for management to resolve the problem. You got to, take the lead. This is your property, not theirs. Take the lead and work with them to resolve the problem, but take the lead. Okay, next pillar. Let's move. Delinquency management. All right. This is a tough one, and this is one that we're still working on. But delinquency is a big piece, right, to operations. You're always going to have it. How do you manage it? How do you reduce it as much as possible? One of the things I'm going to say to you guys is just, explore delinquency management with your management team right away. This is not a point of discussion that I had with my management teams in the beginning. Now, doing this 8 years, now I make sure that we go through and talk about what do you do? How do you handle delinquency? So within that first 90 days, you're going to be wanting to talk about and strategizing with your team. What do you do? What do you do when, 5 days late? Okay, then what do you do? Do you do phone calls? Do you do texts? Do you do emails? Do you do all of that? I had somebody recommend to me, which I thought was a great idea, when you do the posting, when do you do the posting on the door? Is it at day 5? Is it day 10? One of my colleagues suggested do a very bright color, make it a bright red, a bright yellow. It's kind of embarrassing to everybody knows when that gets posted on your door, what that is all about. So it's almost like a psychological shaming thing. So, we took that feedback and we thought that was kind of a good idea, and hopefully the person avoids it the next time. What are your payout plans? What are your protocol? Discuss that. Do you take partial payments? Do you only take, full rental arrears plus late fees? Do you waive late fees? The point of this screen is focus on it. focus on it, figure out the plan, make sure you agree with the plan, make sure they're being consistent and they're executing the plan, check in on the plan. Are there things that have to be changed? During COVID, our property management company, they were very, prior to COVID, it was very much like you have to, when you come to the office, if you're in arrears, you need to pay all your arrears plus late fees. We don't take partial payments. Guess what happened during COVID? We revisited that policy and we were like, people, you need to take partial payments, So, I mean, that's an obvious thing where you would switch it. But my point is revisit that plan every once in a while and make sure that it's working, or maybe something needs to be tweaked so that you can improve on your delinquency percentages. Okay, renewal management. What strategies can be implemented to keep renewals, right? Because we all know turn costs are one of the biggest part, a very big expense line, right? So one of the things is preventative maintenance. Please go over with your teams. What do you do? Do you have systems in place for preventative maintenance? Do you do, 60 or 90-day walks through your units and check on, plumbing and HVACs and this and that, and go in there and do preventative maintenance instead of waiting for things to break down, okay? And exterior, same thing. What kind of preventative maintenance do you do on the outside? The idea is to address issues before tenants have to ask you to address issues, okay? That's what preventative maintenance is about. Offering minor upgrades. What we started doing, didn't want to be too obvious and do it like a month before your renewal is up. So we put a process in place 4 months before the renewal. Do an inspection of the unit and offer something, a minor upgrade, but some type of something. So like sometimes it might be, hey, you know what? The kitchen lighting is kind of outdated. We'd be happy to upgrade that for you. Would you like that? Or we offered, I don't know, we offered something having to do with the internet, charger stations or something like that. My point is, if you offer, something that's not, too much, too expensive, but you offer it out of the blue, and it happens to be a couple of months before renewal, it may put them in a good mood, feeling good about their management, feeling good about management and how the property is being maintained and how they're relating to you. So do that. That has worked for us. Always track why people are leaving, right? You always, try to get that feedback from people, because obviously if it has anything to do with what management is doing and it could be tweaked or improved upon, you want to do that. And obviously the last point is, you have to balance raising rents versus losing a tenant, right? It depends on where you are in your business model. But, sometimes you want to push out tenants and that's your business plan to push them out. At other times it's like, what? I would rather, based on what's going on in the property, I'd rather not go for the $100 push, keep this tenant for a $20 or $25 rent increase, avoid the turn, right? So you've got to be thinking about, what am I doing? Why am I doing it when it comes to this piece? Okay, prospective resident marketing. So this is what I was referring to when I talked about the property that was that I had to jump in and move down there just for a week. So from that experience, we now understand what the most important part. So here's the thing. Everybody talks about marketing. It's like, okay, management company, what do you do? Do you do Facebook Marketplace, and do you do apartments.com, and what else? And, am I paying for it? What's the free marketing? Blah, 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 blah. You know what no one is talking about? Nobody is talking about the follow-up with the leads. And that was the big piece missing with that scenario that I talked about. And that is one of the things that we've honed in on as most important, because when people call up, great. But then what happens? When they call up and ask questions and then they get an application via email or whatever, are you calling them back within 24 hours, or are you emailing them for a follow-up? What are you doing to get them to the table to fill out the application, get screened, and sign the lease? Time is not your friend, okay? Immediately follow up on your leads. Speed is what matters. Speed is what is critical to increase your lease ups. Your leads go stale fast. What we learned is that when we were going through the process of following up with people that our manager was not following up with, we were calling some people back within 3 days of their initial contact. they were gone. They already found another place. So that's what we found. That's the critical, that's for us in our experience. That was the missing link that we now realize has to be concentrated on a regular basis. Okay, community management. Setting the tone of your community, people. What are you doing to set the tone of your living community? We have welcome gifts, welcome mat, whatever it is, I'm not going to say make sure, but I would suggest a welcome gift is a nice setting of the tone. I do quarterly community newsletters. Okay. One of the things, I'll jump down to the other bullet, the last bullet regarding quarterly community newsletters. You could be just announcing things. We include some community news, things that are going on with the schools. One of the things that Chris suggested recently, we're trying to figure out how to do this, is if you gather up enough information from your tenants, like if you can get birthdays or if you can get information about them that they may somehow volunteer, maybe there's certain things that you can announce. So-and-so is getting married, good luck. So-and-so got a new job promotion at, whatever big employer in the neighborhood is. Like if we can, his suggestion was if you can start getting a little personal and congratulating tenants about certain big gifts, who had a baby, things like that, that would be really cool. So we're working on that. Right now, it's been more generic information, but the point is, we've been sending routinely the quarterly newsletters out. Of course, we announce when we're doing things like raffles, that's what you want to do, right? Community events. We did a grab and go breakfast recently. We always do a spring event. We always do like something for the kids during Halloween. We always raffle off turkeys or some type of turkey basket or gift card for Thanksgiving. Seasonal events, like, create a sense of community, and people will, may want to stay longer than if there's no sense of community at all. Reputation management. Okay, never did this. We didn't do this for a long time. We figured this out over the last couple of years. What is the online community? What does the online community know about your property? Constantly check your Google reviews. Constantly look at it all the time. Be obsessed with it. Make sure your management company is doing the right thing. Work hard to extract good reviews from your tenants. Have your management company ask tenants to post a review. Did you have a good lease up experience? The whole experience when you first reached out to us and everything that we did, was that a good experience? Do you mind putting a little feedback up there? Or if, if your team handles something well, any type of maintenance project well, ask for some feedback. Make sure they're checking for the negative reviews. Make sure they're responding to the negative reviews. Make sure they fix whatever the negative reviews is addressing, and then ask the tenant to do a follow-up. Would it be possible for you to now post a follow-up to what happened, or take down the negative review? Follow-up, follow-up, follow-up. Get reviews posted. Always look at that rating. It matters. People are looking at that when they are prospecting new properties. So you need to care about it because the prospective tenants care about it. We all know that people read reviews. All right, that is the 6 pillars. Day 1 after close, you're feeling better now because you have a lot of information, hopefully, from this. I'll answer any questions, but hopefully for the newbies on here, and even some people that may have been doing this a while but didn't do everything that I'm suggesting, feel a little bit more confident day after close. Any questions?
Hey, thank you very much, Krista. I wish I had known this when we just acquired our first 44 unit. Just like Joe said, a lot of things we kind of missed and just let it go. But now we realize these are the things that we should look at. I had a couple questions in the chat box. I think I could start with Jay. Jay, you had a question. Can you speak up, actually unmute yourself? I want that engagement.
Sure. Hi, Krista. Hi, everyone. So when you go over the, you like to stay in the old, let me put it using different word, traditional way.
Non-tech way.
Yeah, that's right.
Non-tech way.
Yeah. So how would you have an on-site manager or property manager and follow up on each task once completed it? And make sure getting everyone up to date and notified.
Right. So like you're saying, because you're not using it, I totally get it. You're a techie person, right? So because I'm not using Asana where they're like the tasks are in there, right? The tasks are in there. So I get it. So, for me, it was more about because I'm not doing that. And I did try Asana. I freaking hated it. I kind of felt what was happening is even with you utilizing something like Asana, it was getting done last minute, like what they were doing is probably getting it done before they knew the upcoming meeting was coming up, right? This is actually why I feel weekly meetings are so important, because if I give you a task and it takes a week to do it, I'm okay with that. So, the fact that you don't turn around and do it in 48 hours to me is not tragic, right? So for me, it came about if you get onto the next call and we're going through these tasks and you haven't done it, it's like, well, why not? You've had a whole week. Do you know what I mean? And I kind of felt like with Asana, what was happening is I would see the tasks sitting there, and then it would kind of it gets done by the end of the week anyway, by the end of the new meeting. So I'm kind of like, I'm dealing with this platform that I don't like. I'd rather just say, I'm holding you accountable. This is the new task. Please report back to me that it's done by next week, unless it's something that we know can't get done in a week and then you're just following up on it. But that's why I felt like just doing the email notes, sending them out and holding the team. So here's what happens without an Asana task. There's not something that's beeping in their system, right? To remind them. No, I get it. So the lack of that technology isn't helping them, but what they know, I've set the expectation. I gave you the notes after our meeting. The tasks are in there, what needs to be done. I'm holding you accountable at next week's meeting. So like they know me now, and that's how I operate. And whatever they have to do on their end to set it up in their system to remind them to get it done is their business. As long as come next week, they have done it or they have a reason why it wasn't done.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. We have Jonathan Stanley. If you could unmute yourself and speak up. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Jonathan just directly texted me. I'll read it for you. So Jonathan's question was, how do you pick your property manager? Do you go with a bigger, well-known player in the market or go with a smaller counterpart who is willing to work for your business?
Oh, this is just so much to know about how you vet out your companies. It depends. I mean, I found that the bigger companies are more sophisticated and they have more systems in place. And so sometimes they're the better choice because they have more resources and more systems in place, right? And more experience. But they often, depending on where you are in the market and what type of property you have, they may not be a candidate. A lot of those companies will not do 100 units and less. They'll only do 101 units and more, right? So you may not have a choice and will have to go with a smaller operation. The smaller operations, there's challenges there too, again, based on resources and systems. So, listen, again, in my experience, whether they're super big or super small, you got to squeeze the most you can out of either type of company. And it's all going to be about how on top of them you are with them, whether they're big or small. And by the way, I don't necessarily think the big companies aren't willing to work with you. The company I have in Atlanta is a very big company. Atlanta is a big market and I have a lot of choices. They're very big. They've been around for a long time. They have a lot of systems in place and they've been very flexible with us because we want what we want, but we ask with grace. We're flexible. We're team players. We're willing to do the do with them. It's not just about barking out orders. It's also about getting feedback. I defer to them. One of the things also regarding setting in the right tone with them, like I may want to do something a certain way. This is just, again, human relationships. But I'm always going to ask for feedback. I'm always going to explore their position. And at the end, I may still decide I want it done the way I want it done. but I don't bark out orders. Like, I'm always about, give me your feedback, tell me what you would do, let me explore it. And then as a team, we may still decide to do it the way I wanted to do it. But it's always about, having them feel like they have a say in the process. I mean, that's why you hired them. They have field experience in the market you're in. So, you have to give them their say. But either way, you are truly the deciding factor in how successful your management company operates. That's what I believe. If you don't complain about how good or bad they are. If you've checked out of the process, you don't have a right to complain.
Thank you, Krista. I see Federico, you had a question you want to ask?
Hi, Krista.
Hi. Hey,
And
Federico.
everyone. Right, where was my question? At what point do you think you can hire an asset manager based on cash flow or number of units?
Oh, it's cash flow. It's cash flow. I mean, we're only getting to the point now. We've hired some. We took, Nick. I don't know if you guys, some of you know, Chris hired his nephew Nick, and he's straddling right now between assisting me with asset management and assisting Chris with lead generation and prospecting and everything like that. And it's completely based on just like how much money we're now making, and can we afford the salary? And we are getting to the point where I definitely do need more of a full-time asset manager to assist, because the portfolio is growing and I only have so many days, and I'm responsible for so many other things as well. It's not just asset management. But it's not about the number of units, because you can have a lot of units, but if you're not, if it's not generating, if you're not hitting your marks and generating your cash flow the way you thought and making the money that you thought you'd make as a sponsor and asset manager, it's not gonna matter, right? You gotta be making enough money to support the salaries.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, great. That's all on the chat box. Do you have anyone has any questions? You can unmute
Hey, guys.
and speak up. Hey, Johnny.
Hey. I had a question, Krista. So we have a particular individual here in the area, and she's done property management for a while, and I can tell that she does not have the most sophisticated system, nor does she have a team, but she's starting her property management. Would you essentially take that risk on to say, okay, let's work together? Maybe the properties. My wife and I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Sometimes the properties are kind of skinny, the returns, but if you have a property manager willing to work with you, take equity instead of 7, 9, 10%, do you think that's a worthy risk to grow with them, knowing that they have things to learn? Just say we're going to grow together. Is that a risk you would take?
All right, I want to make sure you're understanding I'm understanding the question. So you have someone in your world who has some experience, does not have a property management company.
She's property managed for other people, and she's just starting her own.
She's just starting her own. And you want her what? You want to take her more in-house and give her equity in deals as part of compensation?
Yes.
I actually think that that's something worth exploring, and I'll tell you why. Number one, an equity in a deal is a huge incentivizer, right? So my concern though is so having said that, one of my concerns though is you have to have some safeguards. What happens if she's a disaster? Now she's got equity in your deal, and what do you do with her? Does she still get equity if you've got to fire her? You know what I mean? So in one sense, I think it's got to be someone, if you're going to start giving equity in the deal, it's got to be someone that you actually know for a while. Like I'll give you an example of what we're talking about. So we've taken on an employee, and one of the things that we were talking about, because we're not actually, he's not making like $1 million, he's making decent money, but it's like, we want to incentivize him and potentially make more money, but not necessarily having to raise his salary. So we're talking about structuring compensation where we can give that person equity, right? But we know this person for 2 years already. He's busted ass for us for the last 2 years. He's proven himself. So we're comfortable at this point offering split compensation where it's some compensation and some equity. So I do think that that's a very viable path to explore. I'm concerned about doing it with someone that's a stranger though.
Sure. Thank you. Thank that perspective.
Unless you can structure something where, and then I'll finish, the deal can allow you to pull out and release each other from the deal, and maybe some type of payment for her to exit out should it not work out, right? Because you just don't want her to be in there having
Sure.
equity in a deal where she can't be a productive value partner anymore.
Do you have like metrics, qualitative or quantitative metrics on your property management team? So let's say I put metrics on this individual or what the operation she was running. Say, hey, if you hit these benchmarks or these metrics, it's compensation or equity and compensation, kind of like you were saying. Do you have something, a grading system like that, or no?
Right now, we don't. I mean, I don't think that's a bad idea to do that, right? I think that's actually a really good idea. That is not something that we've built out right now, like charting that type of benchmark system. It's been more gut right now, and then just seeing the results, but we haven't been that systematic when it comes to grading our teams.
Well, Krista, that would be very deal by deal and
Yeah.
market by market specific.
Yeah, because we have different teams. Yeah, because now we're all over the place. We have different, for the longest time, it's been one manager with us having multiple deals in Georgia. But now, we have different teams because we're in different markets. Very recently, we've really spread out.
Okay, thank you. Jamie Alice, can you speak up yourself? Jamie, are you there?
Yes. So I'm just wondering, what do you think is most negotiable in hiring a new property manager? Like, obviously you've done many of these. Where do you think is worth negotiating? Whether it's lease ups, whether it's move-in, like where would you renewal?
So there's two different types of the way management is run. A lot of the smaller properties can't support a salary, right? So these are like red flags, not red flags, but this is how it will go with the smaller property as opposed to a larger property where they're running salaries through. So a smaller property is going to have a higher management fee. So instead of like a 4 or 5, like a 3 to 4, which is what I'm used to with the bigger properties, they're going to want 7 or 8%, right? Then they're going to want commissions. And they're, the two ways they're going to do it is they're going to say, okay, we get X amount on a lease up, we get X amount on a renewal. We're not really fans of giving out anything on renewals. So that's always a negotiating point for us. If they are doing, if this is a structure where it's lease up on renewals or, lease ups, commissions on lease ups. And if that's how they're doing it, be very careful that you make sure you negotiate a clause that says if the tenant moves out within the first 9 months, 11 months, 6 months, pick the number, they don't get a commission on the new tenant that moves in, right? Because what are you giving out, a half a month to a month's rent as a commission bonus if somebody moves out within the first 3-4 days, or has to get months, or has to get evicted? So that's a particular point. This same type of structure on these lower unit counts, okay, they're going to do a higher commission rate. So obviously, how high are you going to go? They usually, on the lower unit counts, they're going to probably start off at 10%. I try to whittle them down to 7 or 8, even on low unit counts. I don't like giving commissions on renewals. Obviously, they got to get commissions on the actual lease ups. They're going to run their maintenance through, they won't have a salaried employee. So you are paying their labor rates. So you need to get them specific on, what am I paying? Is it $50? So this is the question. Is it a blended rate? Am I paying $50 across the board? Or am I paying $45 for lower maintenance labor and I'm paying $60 for expertise labor, like electric, plumbing, electric and plumbing and HVAC, right? So you've got to get specific on that, have them drill down, understand. I remember one property I was negotiating in the Carolinas, and it was a 40 unit. So it was going to run this way. And the guy charged a blended rate of $90. I'm like, I'm in New York. I wouldn't be paying that much. Like, are you kidding me? And I don't know if this had to do with the fact that he had a New York client, but guess what? My property is over there getting Carolina rents, not New York rents. So I'm not paying you $90 labor rate. So you have to drill down and make sure you get very specific on that. So, so I'm going to say those are the big issues that you're going to be looking at. Percentage that they want, how they're doing their commissions, and what other type of labor rates that you are paying. When it comes to bigger size properties, you need to drill. Obviously, you're going to get a lower commission, right? So now you're only paying out 3-4%, maybe 5%, depending on your unit count. Payroll, like, what am I paying? It used to be, the benchmark was, a 90 unit, I'm probably going to be paying $90,000 in salaries, like high level. Not anymore. That now it's like, instead of being $1,000 a unit, it's more like $1,200 to $1,400 a unit. So salaries are going up, but you have to understand that. You have to hold them to that. You have to ask them about their bonus structure, because they're going to be giving bonuses out to their employees based on certain benchmarks that their employees do. So you have to get into the weeds about that, so you understand that. So you're going to have your leasing salaries. You're going to have your maintenance salaries. You need to understand, when you're negotiating maintenance, what does maintenance do? Am I paying them to do very simple stuff, and everything else is getting third partied out? So you have to understand, like, one of my properties, our maintenance staff does a good portion of the turn work. That is a beautiful thing. Another one of my properties, the maintenance staff does light maintenance, maintenance calls. They do their maintenance calls. And then turns are third partied out to another crew. So my expenses on that property look very different than the expenses where the in-house maintenance guy is skilled enough to do the turns. So those are the things you have to dig into and just understand, and make sure you really understand the details, negotiate to the best of your ability, but understand it so that you can adjust your pro forma accordingly.
That's super helpful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so if there's no question anymore.
I got one real quick. First of all, thanks, Krista. What a wealth of information and some good insight for us. So regarding the previous question about when is the right time to hire asset management, I've heard that you pay an asset manager 2%, so it wasn't a salary, but you mentioned a salary. I mean, do you bring them on board, or do you have them work off of a percentage of rents?
Okay, hold on a second. What are we talking about? Are we talking about a third-party manager, or are we talking about bringing someone into your company that does asset management, that oversees your properties?
I guess that's maybe perhaps what his question was. It was Frederico's. He said, at what point do you think you can hire an asset manager?
Like hire someone like me, right?
I guess that may be what he's referring to.
Right.
But if you hire a third party, how would you handle that?
But that's what this is. That's what this is. So I'm sorry. Give me patience. It has been a long day. And I want to really dig in and make sure I'm understanding. You're not talking about the third party company which is what I've been talking about all night long. You're not talking about the asset management company. You're talking about, how do you afford to hire someone like a Krista into my company that asset manages the third party companies that are out there managing my properties, right?
No.
Okay, no.
I'm asking, how much would you compensate a third-party asset management company?
Okay, so the third part. So going back to what I was saying before, the way a third-party asset management company is compensated is based on it goes two different ways, and it's usually based on the unit count of your property. Higher unit count properties, they get compensated in 3 areas. Number 1, they get an asset management fee. And based on your unit count, it could be anywhere from like 3%, 4%, 5%. The higher the unit count, the lower the percentages. Okay, that's where they're making money there. They're running their payroll through you. So instead, they have staff that they're going to place at your property, and you're basically going to be paying for their salaries.
Okay.
So, right?
Roger that. Now I'm up to speed. Thank you.
Okay.
Totally got it.
Got it. Okay,
Beautiful.
good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I think that is it all. Joe, let's call it a day.
Yeah, thank you, Krista.
I'm so glad to have been able to do this, guys. I hope that something here was something you never heard of before, and you get to walk away from this saying, okay, cool. I didn't know that, and now I do.
Krista, if they have a question, how can people reach out to you?
Okay, Krista, I should have put that on the last screen. Krista, Krista, at sharplineequity.com. Just the way it sounds, sharplineequity.com. Also, if you go to the website, you can click and there's a phone number there and there's an email. You can hit me up through Yosef. You can hit me up through Joe. Me and Joe are partners now on deals, so he can't get rid of me. But yeah, sure. Happy to answer any questions if you guys have follow-up questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Krista.
Thanks, Krista.
So awesome. Thank you.
Thank you
All right.
so much, Krista.
Thank you.
Happy to do
Krista.
it. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Bye, everybody.
Good
Bye.
stuff. Thank you,
Bye.
Krista and
Night.
Joseph.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you.